André Villas-Boas' first season as FC Porto president has been an absolute disaster. At the time I'm making this video, Porto no longer depends on itself to finish third, something that hasn't happened since 1976. The first coaching choice, Vitor Bruno, was a total flop, but his fancy international successor, Martin Anselmi, has been just as bad. Much like Ruben Amorim at United, Anselmi has had the privilege of sticking to his preferred tactical setup even without the players to make it work, but the results have been a train wreck. At face value, that's a clear sign he'll be given another chance next season to keep doing things his way, but in my view, that will only prolong the club's misery. In this video, I'm going to explain why not only is Martin Anselmi not the right coach for Porto, but why keeping him might put the club in an even worse position than when Villas-Boas took over. But first, and as usual, let me give you some context. Despite financial constraints, Porto had a promising start to the season, pulling off iconic Super Cup win over Sporting. Even after losing key players like Evanilson, Taremi and Pep, Porto still managed to invest in reinforcements that, on paper, look strong enough to carry the team to a respectable campaign, even if not title-worthy. Samun, Ewan Perez, Fabio Vieira, Thiago Jaló. Against all odds, Porto spent money and, together with promising youth talents like Rodrigo Mora, Vasco Souza and Martin Fernandes, it seemed like they had a team good enough for a top 3 finish. But the problem was that the man in charge was a complete mystery. After backstabbing Sérgio Conceição, Vitor Bruno got the job simply because there was no one else with the same squad knowledge willing to work for peanuts and with zero guarantees of a team built to their image. Honestly, it could have worked. How many times has Porto trusted young coaches or assistants and hit the jackpot? These things happen not only in Porto, but in pretty much every other club in the world. But this time, it was a total failure. Vitor Bruno didn't improve a single thing from Sérgio Conceição's foundations. In fact, it was worse, especially with in-game decisions as seen in the draw against Man United. Speaking of United, Porto was dreadful in Europa League. Sure, the financial situation is rough, but the team still had the obligation to perform better against literally every opponent they faced. Vitor Bruno also lost the Portuguese Cup to Moreirense, the League Cup to Oposta Marine Sporting, and even failed to take advantage of 2 chances to reach the top of the league. The last straw should have been the brutal loss to Benfica at the Luz, a scoreline I had never seen Porto suffer in a Clásico. It was shocking, humiliating, but still not enough to end a cycle that most Porto fans never wanted in the first place. Bruno held on for 2 more months, only getting the sack after 3 straight losses, 2 of them against Gil Vicente and Nacional. Porto needed a replacement. I honestly thought they'd bring in the greatest Portuguese coach of all time, José Peseiro. But I guess he's saving himself for a Benfica emergency, so we can claim he's failed at all 3 of the biggest clubs. Nope, it wasn't Peseiro. Not even Rui Barros. It was an exotic name no Porto fan had heard of, but honestly, things couldn't possibly get worse. I mean, Anselmi had a promising resume. In just 3 years as a head coach, he had already won the Copa Sudamericana and the Recopa with Independiente del Valle. Plus, he knows a market where Porto has historically thrived. Still, not everything was rosy from the start. The way he forced his exit from Cruz Azul is shady to say the least. Some fans might feel flattered that he was so desperate to join Porto, but let's be real. This is like dating someone who's cheating on your partner with you. If they did it once, what makes you think they won't do it again? And then there's the sheer arrogance of the man. Amorim has publicly said many times that he's trying to build routines to test who fits his system, but Anselmi, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard him say that once. Besides, United's campaign in the league was dead. Porto's was not. Finishing 3rd is much better than 4th. When Anselmi arrived, Porto still had Europa League and a technical shot at the league, but he said fuck it to all of it. The team went 2 months without winning at home, only ending that drought by beating the mediocre Aves. And guess what happened in the next home match? Unbelievably, they repeated the exact same scoreline, the same lifeless attitude from the first half of the season, and against the one team Porto should never have to roll over for. Defensively, Porto became even more of a mess. The 3-4-3 exposed the centre-backs brutally. Nico Gonzalez's January departure only made things worse. Offensively, nothing improved either. Coincidentally or not, Samu's form plummeted, and the only saving grace has been Rodrigo Mora, whose individual brilliance has kept the club barely breathing. Now, I get what the skeptics are saying. Why not give Anselmi a proper chance? After all, it's just half a season. Maybe Throne is just a nostalgic Pinto da Costa simp, or worse, a closet Benfica fan who wants to see Porto burn. Yeah, sure, wherever you want to believe. But the truth is, from an outsider's perspective, the answer is obvious. Porto is not in a position to make mistakes. If there's money to spend, it needs to be spent wisely. And Anselmi hasn't passed a test to earn that kind of trust. Think about it. What defines a good FC Porto coach? First, they need to be a leader. Someone who turns a group of men into a family ready to go to war for him. Anselmi can't even get his players to respect their curfew. Besides the preordained brilliance of Mora, no one has improved under him. Quite the opposite. Fabio Vieira has been slightly better, but still far from the player Arsenal signed. Diogo Costa's level is dipping, every defender got worse with the new system, and the midfield is pretty much a barren desert of ideas. Which proves my second point. A good FC Porto coach knows how to do a lot with very little. So far, Anselmi ticks none of those boxes. But there's one last requirement. Make the team a winner, or at the very least, make them fight with grit, with raça. Do you think that's been happening? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Sure, this isn't his squad, but based on the team's attitude and his communication, I have serious doubts it ever will be. If Villas-Boas is trusting Anselmi with a blank check to build a squad his way, he's essentially betting his entire presence on Anselmi's success. Obviously, if Porto really wants to play in a 3-4-3, they'll need a full overhaul. That means selling all of their top assets and reinvesting in players that fit his system. If he fails, it could be just as bad as a Lopetegui disaster, because most of the squad won't fit whoever comes next. Unless Villas-Boas truly believes the club's future lies in playing 3-4-3, instead of the traditional 4-3-3 or 4-4-2 systems. But anyway, Porto fans are skeptical by nature and really hard to win over. Quadrians won a league title playing 3-4-3 and still never earned the fans' full respect. Anselmi will have to bleed blue and white and deliver wins. I could be wrong, but I just don't see this partnership working. This was a transition season. There's no more room for mistakes. The Club World Cup money might cover up a few cracks, but missing the Champions League again, especially after heavy investment, will only widen the financial gap between Porto and its rivals, who keep stacking up appearances in the new Champions League format that pays way better. I'm not pretending to have all the answers. I don't know who would be better than Anselmi. Off the top of my head, I'd say Leonardo Jardim. He's one of those coaches who can build young, low-budget teams and make them competitive, like he did at Monaco and Sporting after their worst ever season. But I think he prefers the peace and paycheck of the Middle East to a legacy-defining role in Portuguese football. Mourinho is too expensive and Vitor Pereira is living his dream in the Premier League. So I ask you, is Anselmi the man you want coaching Porto next season, or would you pick someone else? And if you're thinking about Porto's future, it's worth remembering the past. Roughly 15 years ago, the club lived through an epic season. Wanna know why that generation still resonates with fans today? Watch this video right here. It's really nostalgic and maybe a lesson in what Porto needs to become great again.